Hey guys, Aaron Miles here with the second part of my Journey Through Wanderer series. This time I'm going to be taking a look at what the Wanderer meta looks like. There aren't a whole lot of resources out there for this, so I figured I'd kind of compile it into one video. Going to have a bunch of timestamps in the description for you to hop around to throughout the video if you're just looking for a specific kind of deck list. I'm also going to have links to all of the top 8s of the events that I pulled these lists from, so that if you want a broader look at what's going on, you can take a look at those, as I'm just going to be sampling usually like one list from an archetype. How I pick them can be kind of arbitrary. Sometimes I pick them because they were American and I live in America, so I assume to see more things out of what came from the American meta. Sometimes I highlighted an Italian list because it was more interesting. And overall, the Italians have had more events than us, so I have more deck lists to pull from them. So, kind of going to get down into what the meta looks like for Wanderer real quick with a quick graphic. So, of the 4 events that we've had, they've all cut to top 8, so we've had 32 deck lists top 8 to look at. 11 of them have been Lilius Petal, or Fox as it'll be referred to from here on out. Surprisingly, this is one that not a whole lot of people saw coming. 8 of them have been Arla 2, and only 6 have been Fiethsing. 3 of those Fiethsings were at the One American event, so Fiethsing not doing super hot in Italy. Arla 2.0 really taking a rampage there. If you're looking at just Italian, actually, it is 8 Lilius Petal that have topped, as well as 7 Arla. So in Italy, the race is a lot closer between Fox and Arla, whereas here in America, we only had 1 Arla top to the 3 Fox. And then you get a small breakdown of all Pricia, Charlotte, Lumia, Gill Alhama'at, and Avatar of Wind Magic Stones. So, gonna get into some of these deck lists, show you what a generic version of them would look like. If you're just trying to kind of get an idea of what everything looks like, trying to build a base, kind of get a gauntlet going, this is kind of where you want to be looking to. So first we have Fox. So I actually took the time to break down the Fox variants as well. Of the 11 Fox decks that have topped, 8 of them contained white, 3 of them contained blue, 2 of them contained red, and only one of them was a pure black-green Fox list. Now, I use the word contained because it's very important to note that for a couple of these lists, like the ones we saw in America, they only ran 1 white stone, they only ran 2 white cards. It was like Seal of Wind and Light and Sign of the Future. Sign of the Future you can set anyway, so it's pseudo white card. But for the most part, a lot of the Italian decks contain white because they play Dreams of Juliet. And a few of these have been like mixed. I believe there were 2 white-blue Fox decks, 1 white-red Fox deck, and then, just 1 pure blue and 1 pure red. But for the most part, white making its way into 8 of the 11 Fox decks that we've seen top. And it's really mostly for Dreams of Juliet. They're running anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 copies. Usually they'll side deck Seal of Wind and Light as well. Sometimes they'll main it, sometimes they'll play Butterfly, go a little more white heavy. But really the cards that you want to be looking for here is just Seal of Wind and Light, Dreams of Juliet especially, and occasionally Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly. If you're looking for a white Fox deck, really those are all anybody's including. You could play, what's it called? Genesis Creation. But for the most part, it's really just those 3 cards you want to be sticking to. One thing I actually did forget to do is look at how many of them are running Pumpkin Witch, but as I said, there's links in the description to the deck lists, so you can take a look for yourself if that's something that interests you. Personally, I recommend Pumpkin Witch, as the deck list featured to the left of me is something that I actually created. It took 2 of the top 4 spots at the One American Wanderer event, and then funny enough, at the most recent Italian event, the second place Fox list, the winner of that tournament was Lumia. So the second place Fox list actually looked pretty much exactly like this list. There were a few cards that were changed. I believe he dropped the Seals and the Sign of the Futures for additional copies of Zeke's and Dreams of Juliet. But the stone lineup was exactly the same. I actually very much enjoyed the stone lineup. Something else I've noticed is that the Italians are running less Chimeras in their side deck than we are. I saw a few of them that had like 4 Griffin, 2 Amit, 1 Manticore. So there's a lot of playing around you can do with Fox and Wander. I think it's a very strong deck. You have Gretel, things like that, things to really get your stones going. You're not going to be caught in that, oh, I didn't hit a killing stone early enough thing nearly as often. Some people are still electing to play the Fox. A whole lot of variants you can do in a Fox deck here in Wanderer. And it really gives it, it's kind of locks down that top spot. Very strong, very deserving of the spot, I feel. So, once again, take a look in the description if you want to get a broader picture of what these Fox decks are looking like. And then we go on to the Arla deck. This is something, that was surprising. Here I highlighted one of the Italian ones. This is from the most recent tournament, just so that I can kind of show you how the deck has been evolving, because this is a list that's usually pretty standard. You know, you run counter spells, you run blank spells, you run your, Grozbalesta's Secret Technique, you kill your opponent. So this one actually chose to include 4 copies of Morgiana the Wise Servant, as well as a few more draw cards than your typical one, running 4 Tama and 3 Familiar of Holy Wind as well. 3 Writing Laws, I believe, was already standard. And then, it runs Alice's World of Madness to kind of get through the chump blockers of all the other decks. You don't really care about your Tamas and your Familiars dying. You really just want to draw off them. And 1 Madness won't kill Morgiana, so completely fine there. And, once again, more deck lists in the description if you want to get a broader idea of what this deck looks like. Just highlighting one from the most recent event because I did want to show this interesting adaptation that they've put on it with the Morgianas in the main deck. Not something we've seen prior. I believe this was the only one in that top 8 that played the Morgianas, so this is the first time we're seeing something like this, and it could be the direction that the deck takes going forward, which is why I wanted to highlight it. Going down to, I believe, next is Fiethsing. This is the list that topped the event in America, and I believe this was the version played by the Outer World members. For the most part, it is a basic green list with Guinevere's. So the problem with Fiethsing and Wanderer is that if you go back to the standard green build, you actually have a lot of problems dealing with Abdul, which is something that a lot of the other lists mitigate by playing Guinevere, because it's the one card that doesn't get stopped by Abdul. And then these guys took it a step further, also put in Flame of the Outer World. Force Seal of Wind and Light, not very standard, but we have just as many American lists to go off of as Italian lists. The Italians don't like it a whole lot. Some of their lists are a little bit different than this. But this is probably what you're going to see. If you run into Fiethsing in an American event, this is probably the list that they would have looked at to get a baseline for. So this is what I would, look at for that. It's a little off the wall. It's got the Ancient Barrier in the main. It's got the Sinbad in the main. I do think the 4 Apollo is very necessary in this kind of deck, because you do want to just Pumpkin Witch off, kill your opponent with that kind of stuff. Some of the Italian lists have even gone back to running Alice's World instead of Pumpkin Witch. Different things coming out at different times. Then we go into Lumia. So this deck got second place at an event at the beginning of April, and then won the most recent event. Both times it was Federico Zappini. And this is, first looking at this deck, I was really surprised. It runs 5 blue sources. The only main deck card is Prison. You only have 1 Captain Hook in the side deck. And it took me a second to kind of put together what the deck was doing. So it's a Law of Silence lockdown deck for the most part, I would assume. You law your opponent, you Spinning Myth back you Spinning Myth in Frigg, you get back your Law of Silence, you play your Law of Silence, and you just flicker Frigg continuously and recycle your Law of Silence. And for those of you that don't know what Law of Silence does, it says your opponent can't play spells this turn. So probably by turn 4, turn 5 at the latest, you've got them under the law lock. So unless they have a huge established board, you're going to get through. The problem here would be that if they stuck down a Gwyber, it doesn't look like you actually have any removal in this deck for it, so attacking with your Frigg can be very difficult. So that's kind of what the weakness of this deck. If you're playing against this, you're getting really frustrated. You're like, oh, I can't figure out how to beat this. It's really just throw down something that can block the Frigg. Sure, they have the potential to Izanagi it, but they don't run a whole lot of copies of that. You just kind of have to hope and pray that they don't draw perfectly and they get the Law Lock on top of ways to deal with your Gwyber. But this is definitely an extremely interesting list. He got second place in an event with it. He won an event with it, so it's definitely a good deck. And it's something that we'll probably see pop up more in America now that, it's kind of out there in the open. Definitely something I'm interested in. I really like the concept of it. I've been looking to play Lumia and Wanderer for a little while. Then we get into Pricia. This is one of the Pricia decks that topped. It's pretty much what you'd imagine. Just Cthulhu, Ruck-Egg, Burn. Wanderer is a little bit faster than New Frontiers, so you don't need to play things like Spinning Myths, because people aren't really playing Death Scythe. So you can just get through on the horse alone. Split Heaven and Earth exists again, so if the game goes on long, gonna be totally fine there. And this just plays to Pricia's J-Ruler side a lot more than the Ruler side, whereas the New Frontiers decks, they take advantage of both sides. This one's just strictly J-Ruler side. Really nothing. It's just faster that way. If you play burn spells instead of creatures and Wanderer, you're gonna find that your deck's a lot faster. It's a lot more able to handle the field. So, 5 9 Thunders in there, 4 Lightning Strike, 2 Thunder, 3 Summons from Memoria. It's not Summons from Memoria, it's something from Memoria. The spell that deals 500 to your opponent, or 400 to a Resonator, and you gain a red mana kind of thing. You know, just burn spells, Regalia. It's even got the Apollo in there for flying, so that you don't have to rely solely on the God's Art for that. So this is what Pricia decks are looking like in Wanderer. Not super surprising, but you know, definitely something to keep an eye out for. Then we have, there was only one of these in any top 8, so you know, I figured I'd highlight it. It's Guardian of the Green Magic Stones, or Guardian of the Wind Magic Stones, Avatar of the Wind Magic Stones, sorry about that. And so this one looks a little bit more like the World decks. You know, it plays Morgiana, all these draw cards, and then it goes into the Spinning Myth engine instead of Gwyber. And Spinning Myths are a lot easier to piece together when you have Morgiana in your deck. So this is kind of one of those like off-the-wall kind of things. Probably not something you're going to be seeing, but if if your opponent flips a green dragon against you, you're probably looking at something similar to this. Then we get into, there was one Charlotte Burn in a top 8. I believe it actually got 8th place, but it's still top 8'd, and this is a deck that, you know, I've been telling people about. It's a deck that, like, people know exists in Wanderer, they just don't know what it looks like. This is what it looks like, so that's the whole point of this video, showing you what these decks look like. There's not a whole lot of resources for this, so this one's a little bit different than what most people are used to. Usually you're used to a few more burn spells than this. This one actually does get a few creatures in there, most notably the Slime. I don't remember its name off the top of my head, and I don't want to, interrupt the video to look it up. But it is a 2-mana card that you can tap a red to give it haste, tap a blue to give it flying, and it gains 200 attack and defense for each chant in your graveyard. So if you're looking at the top row there, it's a lot of chance. And these are things that you're playing on your early turns. By the time the Slime actually comes down, it's probably like at least an 8/8. In the meantime, you have Lancelots and Cthulhu's to kind of balance you out. The side deck, Surto, kind of dealing with Vlad, all those kinds of things. So overall, a pretty strong deck here. Definitely something to look out for. This is what you expect when your opponent flips Charlotte. You figure it's some kind of burn deck. Split Heaven and Earth, of course, being legal, makes burn much more powerful than it is in New Frontiers. And this is the list that we have to go off of, so probably going to be looking at something like this. And then Gill Alhama'at. This only topped the One American event. I believe it top 8'd, didn't make it through to top 4. And it's kind of like a standard-looking control deck. This is what you kind of expect out of a control deck in Wanderer. I know a lot of people talk about Val 3. I do personally feel Gill Alhama'at's probably a little bit better. And this is the only list we have to go off of, so there's a lot of variance in Gill Alhama'at and New Frontiers, so I would expect the same to be the case in Wanderer. So this is the one kind of list where it's like, if you see Gill, it probably doesn't look exactly like this. It may not be using Stealth as the win condition, but this did top 8 in events, so it's something I have to highlight. Something for you to take a look at. And I believe that's actually all from me. Once again, going back to these numbers real quick. Fox clearly pulling ahead very hard in Wanderer, especially in the American meta. Arla 2.0 very heavy in the Italian meta, but we even saw that in New Frontier, so that's to be a bit expected. Fiethsing doing about as much in America as it has in Italy, despite only having one American event. So that's the end of the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Once again, resources are down in the bottom in the description. I'm going to have timestamps of the different deck lists, kind of things like that. And, go out there and enjoy your Wanderer playtesting.